We have a quorum, we're good to roll, Rob.
All right, thank you all for coming, Parks Board meeting for March 7th. Roll call, please. Richard Heisey. Bennett Aiken. Here. Donnie Elias.
Here.
Peter Argentine. Here. Rob Mackey here. Kelly Ogrodnik. And thank you, staff Rudy and Phil and liaison Andrew Flynn. Thank you.
We got Richard online there too.
Oh, great. First item. Citizens' comments, 5 minutes each. We have any?
I was expecting one. Let me run out real quick and make sure that wasn't, you just popped their head in looking for
Okay.
what room's what.
Busy building tonight.
It is, yeah. Nice to see.
I done it. Good to see you.
Hey, Kelly made it.
All right. Throwing it up.
Yep.
Don't think about it.
No citizen comments. Approval of the February minutes. Motion to approve. Second. Any comments? Thank you, Phil. All right.
We have to vote.
Oh, we have to vote.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just to be formal.
Grounds and facilities maintenance updates, Phil.
Yeah, we did. Kind of our lull month in terms of weather and getting out there, but we had some really nice pockets. Good stuff. This past month, actually just today, we wrapped up the grant that was awarded for Dixon fencing down at the ball field. That was to cover 300 some odd feet of the outfield radius, as well as refabric the backstop. The poles were in good shape. The backstop, we painted that in-house. And the guys gave us from the fence company a little window to get that done. We got some random 70-degree days and got it painted in February. So that project was fully funded with grant dollars. So that wasn't anything out of operating capital or anything like that. So that wraps up all the fencing down at that field. That was kind of a 3-year phase thing. We did some sidelines, did some safety hazards, finally did the big outfield in the backstop as well. So that one's wrapped up. While we had the fencing down, the guys took the opportunity. We had some forestry guys go out, cleared that back ivy covered hillside that was never accessible while the old fence was down. We got anything hazard standing dead on its way out. A couple honeysuckle bushes out of there, ground removed. It looks a lot cleaner back through there. They finished that this week, farther past the concession restroom building. We did the same thing along there. There was a couple pines that were 1 or 2 leaf, Charlie Brown looking pines. So we cleared that whole hillside down to the corner of left field at middle field, restroom sheds, that corner down there. So that's as far as we made it, kind of before that place gets booming here very shortly. Over at Main Park, the item which the group pushed for, we got it this year, the resurfacing of upper and lower Martha's Playground was approved at the most recent commission meeting. That contractor has a PO, materials are ordered. We're looking for a mid-April start. I'll send you out my ideas on communication. It'll probably just be something that we push out briefly. I know not ideal to right at the start of the season, take our biggest park out of play, but it won't be in July. It won't be in other months. It has to get done. So that'll be about a 2-week project tentatively. We'll take up about 3 parking spots down in the rec lot. Logistically for rolls of the surfacing, small trailer, no large equipment for this. This is a lot of hand work, a lot of hand cutting. We are going to leave the middle planting island and just plan on improving maintenance. At first, we were going to go over it. I didn't really like the concept of that. going over top of, you would see through and see that concrete ribbon edging would be there. It would kind of be a hump. It would look like, what were you doing? You covered something up randomly.
So
So
this is just a top layer.
this is a top layer of a synthetic grass product. It does not have infill, does not have any maintenance needs in terms of grooming and the other things that come with the athletic type turfs. So has an 8-year product warranty. So by the time all of the Main Park master plan process goes through, if it's replaced, yay, nay, phased, whatever it is, we're maintaining a safe surface for our most visited park, which is the number one. The bed will not be mulched. The perimeters will still be mulched lightly. We're gonna go a lot lighter this year. That doesn't mean much. It's just that little bit less that'll get carried in. But we will have to change maintenance practices a little bit. Usually we can go up there with a blower in the morning, get everything off the surface. We might have to do a little bit of power brooming, but we have the tools essentially to do all that. We'll adapt and figure it out. Right now, we're preparing all the mowing flower bed contracts that go out. First cut of the year is the best smell in the world. First week of April is when everyone is under contract and ready to go. So that sounds simple, but we have a lot of them, and there's a lot that goes into getting those prepared. The forestry invasives, touch base with Mr. Nuttall this week and last. Honeysuckles, you probably have seen everything that shouldn't be there is starting to be green when, the stuff we want there is not leafing out yet. So now is kind of his push. He's going to start getting in the parks. I have asked him to reach out to me and just give me a general, hey, I'm here, I'm over here. I plan on being here, here, and here today. We get phone calls whenever there's strange things going on, people metal detecting in the outfield, stuff like that. We get random calls on. So good to know who's where. So he said now's a valuable time. He'll be doing that work, identifying invasives that are starting to leaf out. He's been working with Michael Misick from our GIS office. We did a big dump of layers that are super helpful to him. We might have gave him more than he could chew at first. We were pretty ready for this. In terms of everything that Rudy and Michael have built over the last couple of years and even before that. So
What are all those layers? And what does it look like?
Property parcels, sewers, storm drainage.
It's not photos.
We have orthography, so yeah, I can match that up. Different years of orthophotography. Aerial, yeah. At different. I think we have. I think the best we have is 1 foot pixel. So it's pretty detailed. You can get in pretty tight and pretty good stuff. So.
So he'll be doing that kind of. We'll have a little bit more from him for this next meeting. Obviously, he's a lot of the planning and stuff like that isn't too fun to report on to you guys. So I know there's not much action, but there is. So he's putting himself in a good spot to be ready to get out here quick. Over at Iroquois, our forestry crew completed a pretty large ask of pruning a lot of the dormant species up off the playground equipment, starting to encroach there. There's an actual 3D bubble dimension you have to hit above any inch of that playground equipment. So we were getting close to that. So they knocked back the oaks and stuff very tastefully over there. It looks a little more open. Sometimes we had some mildewy playground surface in the back corner there from all the shade. So it might make a difference over there this year. Did receive one call, thought would be for citizens' comments tonight, but she might not have been able to make it. Little girl cut her finger a little bit on the dome climber that's over there. There's just layers and layers of old paint on that thing and everything like that. So we do have, that was identified in past inspections. It's due to be painted and freshened up. Just didn't get there yet. We obviously now our season for both type of things are coming up there. So we'll get that all chipped up and addressed and ready to go over there. Guys have been replacing swing belt restraints across every park. And right now we're working through just some more aesthetic pieces, repairs over at Main Park. Wheels that fall off the ground play stuff that isn't safety related, but you package it, you get to it. get ready to go when the weather breaks, we go after it. So our new carpenter this year is his first go with, playground stuff. He kind of said it was like a very important IKEA thing to look at these blow-up diagrams of like, parts and everything, but he's getting used to that. So I'm happy to have another set of hands for those things. That's it there. Coming in the future weeks, what we'll be working on, in, rest of March here, final grade and seeding over at Williamsburg. We'll get that, you'll see a couple piles of, from stump grinding, everything like that. We'll get that smoothed out, get a good surface for seeding. We have all materials on hand. We're ready to go there. And we'll see the timing of when our spring tree order arrives too. We have some staple trees to place in there too. Work with Kelly on that. Our turf field has its annual spring inspection from Shaw Sports Turf on this Thursday. They walk the whole surface with myself, look at minor seam rips, things that come with age of the field, even with brand new install of the field. They fix everything. We're under warranty. He gives me any pointers as to any maintenance items you think we might be lacking, we could do better, anything like that. It's a really good visit that they do twice a year for us. We have 2 more years left with that. It's a 10-year program. Also beginning the Dixon ball field ready for girls freshman softball and Wildcat over or Seymour Field over there. Just the pitcher's mound is really the high intensity prep item for varsity baseball over there. Rob Hollow, we are still waiting to hear back and coordinate the replacement of the trees that didn't quite make it in the fall. He wanted to cut those in the spring rather than a fall plant. So Zatola Landscaping will be coming back to do that. And we'll start doing some split rail repairs around town. There are many, so we will pick one and we'll get started with that from there. So
Where do you get that supply finally?
It'll be replaced with the similar model going down the railing from down to the soccer field at Bird that we ripped out and redid last 2 summers ago. That seemed to go very well. The guys got a little system down for that. It was pretty well received from everyone. So we're going to continue with the standard style and stick with that where we're making split rail repairs.
What is the requirement? Is it relative to the grade that you're walking on or the grade that you're adjacent to? What determines where a fence or railing is required?
I don't know that answer, but there's sections of Lower Bird by the fire pit where there's railings falling down and I don't even think they're needed.
That's what I'm.
It's more aesthetic, so
Yeah.
those will probably just get removed.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Versus where the water fountain is up top by the shelter, that definitely warrants, a rail up there, but I don't know if there's a standard. You're in the woods. I mean, we'll do the best effort we can based on situationally where it is.
Okay, that was just, I don't know if it's gonna come up in trail design guidelines, but less infrastructure.
Is he,
Be better if it's not required.
when they're over there at Bird Park in that section by where the water hits the culvert, the spike coming up, that bench is still there. That's kind of blending into the hillside.
There's 4 sets of benches that'll be reclaimed into the,
Good.
there's no
It
reason.
doesn't
rip
need to
them
be
out.
there. I mean,
It's not like the lumber shattered. We just need to do a better job, me telling the mowing contractor that, to get back behind there, leave these benches open up.
well, no, there's one bench there that's like totally shot.
In the lower bowl, are you talking up?
You go from the culvert up the trail, heading
Yeah, up
back
the
toward
trail.
Youngwood.
Okay.
It's just right there, and I can take a picture for you if you want.
Fire pit, right above the fire pit.
Yeah, right above the fire pit. It's real close to the fire pit and the culvert.
Yeah.
After the 10 years are up on the athletic turf, the artificial turf, what happens then? Is it just become a sort of we pay as we go maintenance, or is it the warranty that's 10 years? What's the 10-year?
The 10-year provides them to show up on site 2 times a year, spring and fall. They groom the surface as opposed to our crews coming out and doing it. There's 2 guys with there. One guy walks every inch of that field as the other one's grooming. makes repairs. The repairs aren't that involved. We're capable of doing them, but we've paid for 10 years worth of repairs on that field. So we have yet to do one
It
ourselves.
doesn't require equipment that we don't have.
No, not for a small seam. Wherever the colors change normally is where the seams start to separate because of how they're installed on either backing or sewn. So that's kind of the hot spots of where they come apart. It's as simple as applying an epoxy, vacuuming out all the crumb rubber, sand base to get a good bite to it. Put a weight on it for 8 hours, pull it off and play ball. So
I was just seeing LaSalle where they have artificial turf on their field and it's out of warranty and it's like buckling in places and athletes are tripping and stuff, so they're gonna have to replace it.
Grooming is really important too, so you keep those fibers standing up, you know, with the infill and so forth, so.
Yeah, I don't know if they neglected it or
Yeah,
it
it
would
could
just
be, yeah.
aged out or what. It's in bad shape.
Yeah.
I tell you.
Totally side topic, but the tree, space, by Upper Martha Park Playground. That hole that's there, that's been there, I don't know, as long as I can remember. There was once a big beautiful tree there, I would assume, and it fell down and there's just an empty space. Right at the top of the playgrounds. Can we put another tree in there? Or is there a reason we?
Do you mean where the big sycamore was?
I assume
that's
so.
sycamore.
Yeah,
That's
we grind
sycamore.
this
We ground it out, it's grassed over, it's in full, but it's to your point, it's just a grass.
Yeah, you could tell, once upon a time, there was a tree there. And now it's just a
I
circle.
think we avoided that. I'm gonna say because it's so close to the playground, avoided putting a tree in there. I mean, we could plant one, there's no
Wow.
reason why we couldn't plant one, but.
I was always curious.
At the Markham Playground?
No, at Main Park.
Oh, Main Park. I
Yeah,
thought I-
Main Park, up in the top of
Oh, Upper Mark. Okay.
Yeah, that.
Spider web thing.
Yeah, I don't think I ever remember the tree there, right? I lived right up the hill, but I don't think I ever
It
remember.
was a
it.
big sycamore. Yeah, it was.
When did it come down?
We took it down
2
about.
years ago, I believe.
Oh, so it was there.
Yeah.
There was a tree there. Okay.
I think it was dying because of the surface wasn't impervious, so water wouldn't flow, so the tree wasn't getting enough moisture. Right next to the playground, yeah, just the sycamore was, and so the top was dying, so it was becoming a safety issue, so we had to take it out.
Bad shape.
Got it. Okay. It was one of those things where I'm like, yeah, it seems like a hole and wondering why we can put a new tree in.
Reminds me of a few meetings ago, we talked about a donation tree for Main Park.
Yeah, that was planted.
There's an elm, hybrid elm planted.
Yeah, that was over by the swing set
In that.
in a different area where
The other
one of those walls. happened.
Maybe in that main park plan or also with the park design. If there was a call for having a smaller tree there, that wouldn't pose any dangers, whatever. But I don't, or maybe just,
Move it back.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? for Bill for? Thanks, Phil.
I really like the change of having him go at the front though.
yeah,
Instead of rushing at the very end here.
yeah.
So, updates on projects underway in parks, we cover a lot of it in that. Facilities updates. Is there anything on the table that anyone wants to ask any questions about? Happy to mark that Dixon complete.
Oh, yeah, I think it was in Milo magazine, and I saw it yesterday when I was walking through the park. There's an autism panel now in the lower playground. Is that permanent?
I think as of right, yeah, they're Williamsburg and North Meadowcroft. we
Like put in
installed.
multiple.
School district installed North Meadowcroft. We did Williamsburg and,
It's been there about a year, right?
I think it was like late November, our carpenter built frames. and so-
Yeah.
Is there a braille component to those?
I don't think, I believe they were just, they had a specific mounting height. They wanted us to try and match, but I didn't notice any texture.
That would have been nice to have that, just another population for accessibility. But there's no way to do it retroactively, right?
No, those were donated by a group that focuses specifically on autism. Yeah, and they championed that rather forward. Yeah, so they were pre-designed
planting. We just did the
Sign.
mounting,
Yeah.
you know, whatever it needed
Okay.
to be mounted. That's our carpenter worked on that, so.
Questions? I mean, it's great. Don't get me wrong. It's just on my mind because I have a friend who's might be adopting a 2-year-old who's blind. So,
Okay. Commission update.
I don't know that I have anything in particular, that needs to be called out. Be honest, I know it's probably a change from Mindy, probably always had lots of updates. Yeah, but, I mean, things are progressing. Yeah, it's relatively quiet right now. Obviously, everybody's ramping up for Vibrant Uptown. Yeah, which is going on. I have been having conversations, with school district, with some of the people at the school district. Yeah, about, well, one of the topics is, fields, more broadly, right? Again, I'm kind of concerned about turfing Bird Park. Yeah, and, how do we start thinking more broadly about field space? So I've started, those conversations, I would say in an informal way, initially, I just want to kind of start the dialogue. But again, my hope is that we can start to understand our athletic fields as a collective whole. How do we think about that? Because again, as I've said, I don't think that turfing Bird Park makes any sense whatsoever for all kinds of logistical reasons, let alone, the environmental issues. But, we need the athletic fields. And so how do we focus on Mellon or Jefferson as fields that do deserve attention, whether that's turf or that's just a more proactive management of the space? I'm agnostic. I just know that those are much better fields to use. So how do we start working together even more closely to maximize that? So that's one thing that I have been working on. I suspect that we will see the CIP change, be a more agnostic definition of needing field improvement dollars. Right. I think we will see it remove the definition of the Bird Park reference and the turf reference. It will just be generic, upgrades for fields. But that will come with the next CIP. So no announcements or any changes will come. It'll just get done with the next CIP.
something I wanted to also bring to your attention is because of the idea of schools, having been at Seton LaSalle. And they mentioned that they're raising money to redo their turf. And I was thinking, that might be a field that's really not used on mornings and the weekends where they need it. And it's right adjacent to our unused McNeely Park. Not that, but I mean, it's within Mount Lebanon essentially. So I think it might be worth contacting them because being also a private school, they may need the funds,
Yeah.
or rental or whatever.
Well, I think what you bring up is a question of how do we understand recreation and our recreation facilities as a kind of a region or maybe a sub-region. Again, Seton LaSalle, Lebanon, Dormont. Right, all of these entities, whether they're school districts or municipal entities, we all have fields, we all have facilities that we're using. I mean, McNeely is a great example. I mean, if you said, hey, Mount Lebanon, we're going to propose a $60 million rec center for Mount Lebanon in McNeely, I'd balk at it. But if you said Mount Lebanon, Dormont, and Castle Shannon are going to do a joint recreation center that's going to benefit all three communities, that starts to make sense to me. Because of the location, the logistics, would suggest that Dormont and Castle Shannon would benefit just as much from a recreation facility as Mount Lebanon residents. So how do we think about something like that? But as we think about athletic fields, right? Again, as I think I said last meeting, we've got an expert on how to manage turf. We don't need 5 of them, right? We need one who is properly resourced, and we need the administrative tools in place cross-jurisdictionally that help people understand, what facilities are available, when they're available, and how we maximize their use, so that we're not trying to go and dig into spaces that should be natural spaces for athletic fields, right? So it's a journey, right? This is always a journey. And for me, this is a question of how do you get jurisdictions to cooperate more effectively? I think Rudy will tell you, and I think all the staff will tell you, we have great relationships with our surrounding municipalities. We have great relationships with school districts. But I think we could probably do more if we create more momentum around that. So that's an area of my personal focus right now. I'm trying to get those conversations, moving. In the hope that we can start to do something, and have conversations that are more formal, summer into fall, and start building momentum in that area. So that by the time we get to the 5-year CIP, where it's time to spend that $2 million, we're spending it in a way that's benefiting everybody.
Great.
So while I had no update, I spent 5 minutes talking.
I actually have a question about, in one of the last meetings, the commission approved the consolidation of the boards, right?
Yes, sir.
So, it's just an observation more than anything, a comment, which is at the last meeting, I was really impressed by, when we were talking about, which focuses we're doing this year and and we were divvying up who's working on these various things. And it just, as I was walking home, it just occurred to me that, if you consolidate the board, and which I know is done, but something that should be considered, whether it's having adjunct members, is that adjunct members, excuse me, like in this board, we have a lot of talent and everybody's working on very specific things, and our meetings just focusing on parks mainly. And rec, but mostly parks, takes 2 hours. And so when you're combined with all of those and all the various, sports issues as well, it may mean some diminishing returns. So that should be considered, avoid those diminishing concerns and
Very much.
returns. And
I
I still have people working on park plans and trail and so.
No, I totally agree. And I think that's a lot of why, this year is about kind of building out the structure of the boards. For me, we need to continue momentum in these areas. I think, parks, you guys are a very well executed board, compared to some where there is less momentum and it's more just staff readout. So this is a special scenario that we want to sustain. That we already in the governance structure, we've already said that, we can have essentially adjunct members. I don't remember the term we used, but associate members, I think is what we used. Because there's times where a board, as a governing or a governance body needs to vote on things. But you can have subcommittees, right, that focus on other, specific topics that come to the board for a vote. So I think it's trying to empower that type of structure, right? Because we don't need to just gather once a month and hash out everything. We need to create a structure that's going to facilitate dialogue and discussion and promote issues to a board that's going to facilitate a vote to say, this should be raised to commission or to staff for further action, right? So very much agree with you. The other example I would go back to is the mobility and transportation, right? Parking, I think it generally runs itself, at this point. But traffic is a very active board. There's lots of discussions, and we have a quasi judicial function there. And people are constantly bringing things to the traffic board. We don't want to lose that, right? We have the need for residents to bring items to the board for collective review. But we also need to recognize that it's more than just traffic and parking. There's broader mobility issues. So how do we create a structure that's going to understand the governance process while still allowing for subcommittees to focus on various, key areas that will fall under the board's jurisdiction, so to speak, but, continue to progress forward. Again, right now, the way these boards currently function is that we've got 11 advisory boards, and staff have to be spread across them, and commission have to be spread across them, and we lose kind of focus and momentum. So hopefully we can create this, this more robust structure around a smaller number of boards, but allow flexibility within them to, facilitate these processes. So I'm with you 100%.
Thank you, Commissioner Flynn. Any other questions for commission update? Richard? Any questions on commission update or show?
No, no, I'm good.
You're on. Okay, next item, seasonal and special items. I'm just gonna take a minute since we're a little ahead of schedule and the board on some changes to the plan. So April, we're gonna have Ian, Planner McLean's, excuse me, in to talk about the invasives relative to the municipal code. So we will use that time slot for him and that topic. June, we will do, I'm sorry, May, we'll do our CIP and priorities. And then June, we'll wrap the Williamsburg Rockwood PCP tree update in with park assessments. So those will be the changes you'll see on the subsequent agendas.
When Ian's here, can he also discuss Bradford?
Yeah, so I queried him this week via email asking if he has any asks for us.
No.
And he did not say he has anything for us for either Main Park or Bradfordton at this point. But
Still on the drawing board with,
Gateway.
so he said, once that's done, then we'll have more information to talk to us.
okay. With that, then, I'm glad to have a lot of extra time because the Nature Conservancy comes in force. So,
We normally meet during this time, so we were like, we'll just have our meeting across the hall and then we'll come on over. So, I brought my laptop. How should I connect it?
If you want to jump on the link, I'll just promote you to panelist. And then you can share the community and have a good Zoom stuff.
Oh, thank you. I can, so, oh, you want me to be, where do I get the link?
Go to mountlebanon.org. And go to the calendar, Angie. Then just click on March 7th.
This is particularly exciting because I had been wanting to go to Nature Conservancy meetings. But they're always we're on commission night, so.
Right, hey, Sandy, can you help me? There you are.
Well, they're doing that. And I think last year, or the previous year, we also met with the sports board and sustainability. Sometimes there were breakout meetings, but I don't know if you want to try, if there's room to squeeze that in.
Webinar has
Otherwise,
expired.
maybe it could just be you, their chair, kind of what happens to me in sustainability and
Was on
Andrew
that one?
Okay.
Yeah.
last year.
The agenda
But
should be
I
able to
think it's
access
just
the link.
well, I mean, we are consolidating, so I don't know, but they'll meet with the sports board or just see what.
Maybe
Just share.
Go to their meeting.
She
Yeah.
looked at it throh the agenda, but it
Yeah,
says
one of us
the
goes
Zoom
to
link
the
is
meeting.
expired for some reason.
Preferably you.
Yeah.
Right,
As chair, but
yeah.
Let's see if this
I'll,
works.
I'll ask. We'll do that this week.
Where is the agenda? There you go.
Okay.
Let's try that one more time.
minute streamline on catch. Also might be, if I know, like my chair.
Give the kids a watch.
If we have overlap.
Priorities.
Yeah.
Recording in progress.
Your surface and it'll be good.
We can't.
Will you be able to present?
My kid.
I think it's from this morning.
Days old. It's old. Real cold.
Ice coffee. the old fashioned.
So would you be able to make Angie a co-host so she could share a slideshow?
Yeah, promote her to panelist and then.
Two screens right there. Lindsay.
You should be able to share screen.
Yep.
All right.
All right, I'm in there. Why is it not doing that now? Oh, it went, it
There you
was
go.
just okay, sorry. Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you for inviting us to talk and, so the idea is just to introduce ourselves, what we do. We brought friends. So technically, this is our mission statement is to promote the enhancement, growth, and careful use of the Mount Lebanon's green spaces to foster an appreciation of and respect for the environment. Who we are. So this is our board. Not everybody replied to me with what their kind of backgrounds are, but we have a nice wide variety of backgrounds in both, landscape architects and naturalists, but also engineers and project managers, a couple of us in the health and healing arts kinds of things. And then we also have Natalie and Kelly, who aren't technically board members, I'm going to say yet, but have been really great partners with us over the past couple of years. And then Sharda is gonna chat a little.
So just a quick update on the kinds of things that we do as a conservancy. So the first thing that everyone is aware of is that we do stewardship projects. So we do a lot of trail maintenance. We bag lots and lots of invasive species from honeysuckle to garlic mustard. We're always out there pulling invasives. We also work with Boy Scouts, Scouts BSA, to facilitate their projects. We have a pretty active partnerships with them, building bridges and trails, etc. As you might know, we do have a restoration project that we got funding for, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's one of several restoration projects that have happened throughout the years. Maybe less known is that we actually do a lot of education for our public. So everyone's familiar with School in the Park. If you have a third grader, every third grader in Mount Lebanon goes through this wonderful program in the park facilitated by Sarah and Angie. Where we do a field trip essentially to our park. They dissect owl pellets, they look at the stream water, lots of different hands-on activities there. But we also partner with the library and we have programs, and we recently did one on climate change. We've done programs on composting, native gardening with native plants, that type of thing. So it's a pretty active partnership with our library and our community spaces. We also write a quarterly column for the Mount Lebanon magazine, giving our residents information about just green practices. And we actually have a pretty active social media presence, and we have a great website with resources. It couldn't be complete without some outdoor events. So we have lots of events for the public. In fact, we have a maple syruping program that's going to happen this Saturday, and 50 people are registered. That's more than capacity. So I'm going to have to shout loudly. But we do birding and hiking and all these different programs just to get the public outside, interacting with the park. At the end of the year, usually in the fall, we do an Arboretum event because Mount Lebanon is an Arboretum. And so we've put together a program to celebrate that and to keep our status. A little bit about funding. We have applied for grants, and most recently we got funding from the American Water Charitable Foundation for the restoration project that's happening in that riparian area. We'll show you a picture. We occasionally get corporate donations, and of course, we're open to memberships from our community, and we encourage that. In fact, that's one of the big themes for us, is to get our community involved in our parks. So everything we do is that. We have done a little bit of science, and we'd love to do more, bio blitzes, bird counts and such. And I know you're all familiar with our parks, obviously, but the ones that we most often work on are Bird Park. That's most of our efforts, but we do work in Twin Hills and Robb Hollow doing restoration. So as we said, we love to involve the community in a lot of what we do. So whether it's enhancing trails or removing invasives, we usually have a lot of volunteers coming to join us. We have, I think, we've had volunteers as young as 5, and
Our youngest was 3 months old.
Oh. And except for the 3-month-old, we give everybody age appropriate task. I mean, that's part of what we do. We have had tree plantings in the past, and we'll have them this year as well. As we already talked about our scouts, but in general, I mean, we provide about 600 volunteer hours annually, and this includes all those young people who need their service hours. So come spring, those high school students are lining up to come work with us so they can get their service hours. So it's a great kind of win-win for all of us. And that, you know, we calculate that's approximately a $30,000 contribution just in volunteer labor, all of us. Just want to show you all this capital improvement project. I don't know if everyone's familiar with it, but is the riparian area. You'll see Youngwood Drive, kind of at the top of the map. But we did get a grant from American Water to restore about 0.7 acres. We are going to be planting native species in there this spring. So the target date for the completion of this project is July of this year. We do have Ron and Tom behind me who can talk more about this project and others.
And
like
Elaine,
this.
who's
And Elaine, yeah. Oh, great, okay, yeah. This is not our first restoration project. Just briefly, we've done a lot of invasive species control in the past years. Here's some lovely photos to show some of our work. And you can see the transformation from the first photo that's just full of invasive species to the last one where it's a lovely little forest coming to be. And here's one in Twin Hills. We removed lots of invasives in Twin Hills and put native species in the list as well. We certainly appreciate the partnership that we have with the municipality. We are so grateful for all the support that you have given us in the past years, from the lumber and the gravel to loaning us tools, to, when we're done collecting all those invasives, and you come in and remove all that stuff, which, we couldn't do without collecting our trash, trimming our trees, when we tell you, hey, this tree is about to fall, you're gracious enough to come in and get that done. And, we appreciate the partnership. We hope that it continues.
I appreciate all the effort you guys put in. We don't have the resources to do what you guys did, for sure.
Happy to do it.
Thank you.
All right, so then this part, I didn't introduce myself very well, so I'm Angie. I've been I've lived in Mount Lebanon for the 12 years now and involved with the Conservancy for, since the day I moved here. Living close to Bird Park was actually a key thing for me because as a kid, that was my sacred space, and I wanted to be able to give that, not Bird Park specifically, but that kind of space. Make sure that was available to my kids. I think when I say this, I think a lot of us do, that it's not just about taking out the invasives and putting in the good stuff. Otherwise, my yard would look a lot better than it does. But it's a lot about like the relationships and the people that I meet when I do this. When I walk through the park, I see the part that my kids and I, 10 years ago, when I forced them to come to the cleanups with me, I'm like, look at that, we did that together. Or when I teach school in the park and, the kids learn that mud isn't going to kill them, like, that's pretty cool. The first third grader that wants to actually hold that leather, what is that called? The crane fly larvae, which are really gross. And they set the tone for all of the other kids. The high school kids that serve as, instructors and help take the third graders back and forth. Like, they're such good role models for those third graders, and they're such good teachers. It's neat to see them. We have 70 of them every year that come and volunteer. And then to listen to them when they show up desperate for their hours in May, and just to listen to the conversations that they have and talk about what they're going to do this summer, you just be in that space with other people that I don't know very well. And they work so hard trying to get their hours, saying, can I stay an extra hour? Because I just really need it, when you sign my paper. I guess they've gone electronic. I don't need to sign any more papers. To the one day I was walking through the park with my dog, and a friend of mine teaches at St. Paul's Preschool, and she said, hey, Miss Angie, the kids want to know what this is. Do you know what it is? And it was the Mayflowers, May apples, I'm sorry. And so we had a little conversation with 4-year-olds about May apples, which, by the way, if you've ever had a wart, that's what you put on your wart, is the podophyllin, which comes from the May apples. So there you go. So one of my favorite parts too, when we have a cleanup day, is, we get all kinds of people who show up. From the lady who seriously in 40-degree and rainy has her 3-month-old on her belly in her pack, to a 5-year-old who asks the most amazing questions, to a 70-year-old with bad knees. So we have to be able to figure out what not only does the park have us to do today, because there are things that need to be done in different seasons, But what can this 5-year-old do? What can this 70-year-old with health problems do? So that flexibility to be able to meet what needs to be done with who we have, who's willing to do it that day. I mean, it's kind of fun, but you really get to bond with people. And then my work as a health coach, I work at the VA and through clinical trials at Pitt. And I work with people who have some fairly severe and chronic illnesses like cardiac rehabilitation or cirrhosis. And part of what I do is ask people, what do you want? You know, what are you wanting to get out of life? And I would say at least 80% of them are saying, I want to get out in nature again. I want to go for a walk. I want to go hiking. I want to go fishing. I want to go hunting. Whatever it is, like that is a big connection for people. And I think that we kind of do that as a group. We offer that space for people from, you know, those preschool walks and to the 70-year-olds who need to, you know, bring their little padded chair with them. I think that that's one of the things that we're doing, you know, and it's not perfect. We make mistakes for sure. You know, sometimes something gets chopped that shouldn't. But, you know, we're not only building the planting situations, but we're really growing a community when we're doing this too. And that's why I do it.
Giving people a sense of ownership.
Yeah.
of Our community and our green spaces.
Yeah, that is one of the things like the high school kids when you're walking them out, and they're like, yeah, that was really cool. I feel like a little bit more connected today. So I highly encourage more space, more outside time. So how we can help as we go forward in this partnership. I mean, we have 35 years of working together with the municipality. You know, being able to participate in that forestry management, that would be great, you know, to know what's going on and see how we can help. Also with, you know, the trails and things like that, being involved in those projects, just continuing to engage and educate. I think we're one of the few programs that kind of got lucky with COVID. So many things shut down, but we were something that people could do safely outside. And we did see our membership numbers, well, not our membership so much, but our involvement. There's a big difference between our membership and our involvement. But I think that that's one of the things that we can do, like that flexibility that we have to kind of meet people where they are and to provide things for them is one of kind of our strengths.
What's your current membership? Or is it all here?
It's a lot of it is here. I think we have about maybe 40 members. And we've started doing a sustainable membership. So you give whatever amount per month, and that's super helpful so that we don't have to spend as much time and energy every year trying to track people down. But I mean, of the, we asked for the maple syruping, are you a member when people signed up? And there are 52 people, 2 people are members.
Mhm.
So
Potentials.
I hope so. But yeah, it doesn't
Doesn't
often,
always translate.
it doesn't always translate. And we're happy to have people, you know, pay in hopefully not blood, but sweat. Trying not to do blood.
That's in your native place, so.
Yes, and we have our native
Yes.
plant sale coming up. So that kind of is a wonderful, you know, it provides income for us, but also it improves the quality of the plants that are out there, because as you know, a lot of what ends up in the park is what's planted in people's yards. You know, the birds translate things into the park. So if we can get more good stuff into people's yards, there's less bad stuff in the parks. So I think that was it, right?
Yeah, thanks for the
Yeah,
opportunity
thank
to
you.
just kind of introduce
And we-
ourselves and share a little bit about what we do.
Yeah, and we have a wealth of information in the background too, if you have questions about things that Sharda or I don't know.
Just a maybe minutia question, but in regard to the riparian project in Bird Park. For the vegetation that's not trees, are you planting some shrubs and other? What's your protection plan for that?
Ron, you wanna take that?
We're gonna do planting pots, kind of like what you did at Twin Hills, you know,
Okay.
smaller enclosures. With a 6-foot fence, you know, maybe 12 by 12, so it's small enough for a deer won't jump in, but big enough where we can get a nice variety of plants in there. So very similar to what you guys did.
Oh, right. Oh, do you want us to introduce it?
I mean, Ron could as well, or Elaine if she's on.
Elaine is, I think she's an attendee.
Elaine, do you want to talk about the interpretive sign at all?
Oh, I'd be happy to, or please feel free. Sharda, who is an environmental educator, and Ron Block, who you know is a landscape designer and lead up projects for the Conservancy, and I worked on kind of figuring out a focus and direction and overall look of the of an interpretive sign. Our grant is going to pay for $1,500 to make this possible, and it's only possible because Argentine Productions, Peter's company, is donating the services, the professional services, to actually create the design for the sign. So we provided that information, kind of a outline to, and a couple of visual sample of something that looks kind of like this to Peter, and he's taking it under advisement and working on it. And let me kick it back to you, Peter, because I think you can bring us up to date from there.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't looking for a plug there. Thank you, Elaine. Yeah, so and Ron and Sharada, if you want to chime in, but we have to fast track this so that it's completed in time for the completion of the project at the end of June. And the design company, I mean, the sign company is up in Gibsonia. They work nationally, but they need like an 8-week lead time. I didn't know about. So largely it's going to focus on kind of the riparian habitat, the headwater stream. Learning goals would be how the diversity of microhabitats and species are important to water quality downstream, filtering pollutants, slowing water flow. How native plants serve the habitat, including deep roots for durability and holding soil, providing food and nectar for native species, and contributing to the web of life.
Do you want me to show that?
And the importance of dead trees standing and fallen as homes for wildlife, soil builders, so forth. So those are, we're gonna try to minimize text, which is kind of a typical rule for these. Too much text is not great for interpretive signs, but we'll have a design showing kind of the stream and the stream edge and how that all works together, and hopefully some inserts of perhaps native species and things like that, and get at the water flow. And then I printed this out and can pass it around. And so the location of this, personally, I'd like, and kind of the general philosophy, even with the Park Service and so forth, unless you're on an interpretive trail, is to keep signs to the edge. So I thought we could keep it near the culvert area, kind of where the other gateway sign is. Yeah, try to keep a low profile in there. So there's a couple of options. We're looking for a relatively smaller sign than something like the gateway sign, more like 11 by 18, 12 by 18, or maybe 24 by 18. So, and I'd like to do it on a single pedestal. You can do two, but I can pass these around. These are from Paneer Graphics.
It was one sign, multiple panels,
No, one sign.
one sign, but a couple different subject areas, and it was it all one.
It'll be unified,
Okay.
I think. So,
I think the
Yeah, the
idea
idea
is
was-
actually to make something that's really family friendly so that young people could read this with their parents and stuff. So it's not a lot of text, but it's like to take a habitat and sort of dissect it a little bit. So sort of have little call outs that say, you know, what will be found in the soil. And then you could have a call out that shows the microbes or the
I like
salamanders
that
or
Richard
whatever.
Scary books.
Kind of, yeah. So like, you know, just pulling out certain aspects, is just sort of show that it's all one big web.
I'll send once we get further along, and developed, I'll try to send it prior to the next meeting so people have a time to review and comment. We can incorporate the comments, but we have a good team here also. doing the input on it. I think the main thing is always to focus on concepts, big concepts, because the little stuff everybody can read on their own and you're gonna lose people and that won't stick in it. So in park media and interpretive science, the word is interpretive. There's interpretive methodology, which is kind of focusing on, rather than an oak tree grows to 100 feet, it's that an oak tree comes from a little acorn seed that has the potential of all kinds of life. So that's a bigger concept, which without getting into the details. And so I think it's the same thing here. I think there should be some mention that some restoration work has been done here and volunteers have worked here and acknowledge the Nature Conservancy. One question I think for the board, and I'm not sure about the code, is whether we can acknowledge the funder in a public park on a sign,
I don't know the answer to that.
I think there might be a restriction. So, but if not, I probably want to have a little thing there for American water as well. So I think part of it is about the process. And also, because you want to, as with anything in parks, you want to also make a call for action of stewardship. So people can see that, hey, I can do this too. So that kind of thing. Any concerns from board members?
I just have a couple of questions. One is whether or not this could possibly be a template that we could reuse in other areas of our parks. Because right now we're working on the signage.
That was my question as well. It's like, okay, we have lots of signs. And we're trying to create a unified experience. How do we understand this as part of the overall?
Yeah, that's something I brought up initially when we talked about signage, that interpretive signs should really be part of it too. We don't want a lot of interpretive signs, but we still do have interpretive signs. And I shared with Kelly and Bennett, this company also has the entrance signs to parks, where you can have a section for bulletins, but it's also the overall, where you can also include interpretive information. So something I also wanted to mention is I discussed with Elaine that we're gonna get one that has a frame around. You can get them, there's 0 bezel on them, but these will have frames so that you can change them. So 6 years from now, if this area has matured, we can put in a new one or even sooner. The printing is probably the least expensive of the cost. So
That's a good idea.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if can we possibly switch out the sign, that gateway,
I would like to.
yeah, we call it the sign.
I haven't looked at it to see if it has a framework, but at a certain point, I think we should update it to, again, I think it's a little high level in terms of the text on it. And also, if after it's been there, a certain period of time, you could update it.
And maybe use the template that you're creating or something similar to that.
Yeah, but each one is, you want them to all look the same. But I mean, each one may cover different territory, so, a layout may be different depending on what subject matter you're covering.
Yeah, but ultimately, right, I want the same color,
Or
same
right,
basic structure, right? If I have a black frame, I want a black frame throughout the park system.
right.
Right,
You
and
go to Gettysburg, they're all
Right,
the
exactly.
same.
exactly. So yes, you're interpreting something different in each space. But I have a consistent, look and feel.
You have fonts, color.
Right.
Logo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then I would maybe request then before this is finalized, we take a look at it and think about it within the overall
Right.
signage plan that we're working on. There hasn't been much movement on that in the last 2 months, so maybe this will be a moment for it to somewhat get reignited, and we can bring this into the conversation.
Again, and this company could also, I don't know if it's gonna be cost feasible, but their costs do seem really reasonable. In terms of the park entrance signs, not the identity signs, although they might be able to do that too, but the actual entrance kind of gateway signs that have information, so.
Do they also do design or do they just manufacture?
I'm not sure. Because, but there's plenty of companies that do interpretive wayside signage, it's called.
Want to connect?
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry.
and you
So-
had sent that email. We'll get the conversation going. That'd be great.
Yeah, just very broadly. How can the municipality and Nature Conservancy work better together? What's missing?
I think just more of the same. I mean, I think that we're already partnering in so many things, sort of keeping that going. When we need the gravel for the trails, drop off a bunch, we'll get that on the trails and. Just, getting the word out on the work that we do as well, because I think that would attract more volunteers, more members and that type of thing, so that we can continue our work. Yeah.
And I think
We're 100% volunteer and everything we do is all based on donations that come into us. So, I mean, Rudy and Public Works, Phil, they've been awesome as far as supplying stuff when we need it. But if there was any way for the commission to fund us somehow throughout the year, to help with some of that stuff, that would be amazing. But
Well, yeah, and Peter and I've had this conversation. Yeah, for me, when I think about Bird Park, yeah, it is intended to be a natural space. But even natural spaces need to be actively managed. And I would argue that, we haven't been as proactive as we could have been, right? So the question in my mind is, how do we as a community understand active management of spaces like Bird Park? Knowing that the municipality can't do it all, right?
And we can't do it all.
Yeah, and the Nature Conservancy can't do it all, but we need to have a proactive understanding of what the space should look like. And what needs to go into the whole space every year. Knowing that there are major projects that have to get it up to a certain place, right? But then maintaining that space is going to require ongoing work. And some of that is the Nature Conservancy is committed to, and that's great. But some of it is, there's a gap. There's always a gap. How do we make sure as a community, we understand what those gaps are and stay ahead of them or start finding ways to, fill those gaps so that again, we are proactively managing the whole space the way it should be managed rather than saying, well, we can only do this space right now and we're going to let that other space because it's what, 42 acres, is that?
Well, that one alone is
Yeah,
42 acres.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's my big question, not necessarily to the Nature Conservancy, but more broadly is how do we start thinking about these spaces as actively managed natural spaces? And how do we resource them to the level that they need to be managed? Recognizing that volunteer hours is an important component, but it can't be all of it.
there's so many things like catching it early is huge, right?
Right.
So if you say, well, we can't worry about that space right now and you wait 5 years, then it becomes a problem where it's just like out of control. Where if you got it 5 years earlier and got ahead of it, then it's much less cost and time and money to take care of it. So
I think the people in this room, the current and former Parks Board members have really built some momentum now around management, the knowledge of what works, what doesn't. I think the Oikos study that is to include a prescription for how we manage this acre over 1, 3, 5, 7 years, that will be a foundation for us to set that plan of, okay, this is what we need to do to manage these different grades of deterioration and get them up to something more valuable to the community. So I think we've got some momentum on this now. And I'm very hopeful that with that study, we will have like I said, a prescription for how to manage these spaces. And
The spaces that are very heavily infested with the invasives are kind of easy because it's like everything comes out, it's just. And so as we get some of those more surveillance parts, it's almost like your knowledge level also needs to increase because you have to know what's supposed to be there and what's not supposed to be there. So I think that will be a challenge as we get more of the park under control.
We're happy to also, in the Oikos study, since we've been working in the park so long, if it's helpful, we could actually speak to the people who are doing the study to just give them information on what we've been doing in the past. it might be helpful.
One
In
vote
there.
does with that for sure, yeah.
Yeah, just, I think we can do to get ourselves involved and have a seat at the table with this guy, so you're super helpful.
Yeah, I think it's something. Taking information from the databases in everybody's heads and coming up with, this is what you're referring to, maybe Rob, is a management plan that we can refer to every year. And there are a certain set of hours that the Nature Conservancy can contribute, but beyond that, what needs to happen? So then it's going to go beyond the plants, it's the trail maintenance and management, and what trails need to be mulched, or what's eroding away, what needs to be built up. So I think a lot of that, and correct me if I'm wrong, happens based on your experience year to year in the parks and what you're seeing, and then you put together the volunteer days. But would it be beneficial to have a management document that the parks can refer to, and the department can refer to, and the Conservancy can refer to, and then each year it's, it almost becomes part of this, like we talked about at the beginning of the meetings, the things that happen every year. And what's on the agenda every April is, X, Y, and Z, and then May, X, Y, and Z. Does something like that exist? Would it be something that
I know of, I mean,
In our
there's, yeah, that we have intentions, and then some of it is like, what does the weather is it gonna do? And because it's volunteer based, some days we get 4 people to show up, some days we get 30 people to show up, and we don't always know what's gonna happen.
But we
So
certainly-
that's hard to predict,
But we certainly have a cadence, like we know when we're pulling our garlic mustard, we know when we're doing the stilt grass, we know when we're mulching the trail ahead of school in the park. So we do have it in our heads, we do have it on our website.
And there's
but-
guidance
yeah.
from Penn State on when to do what as far as invasives, so we tend to go by that as well.
But it would be great if there was a document that all of us were doing the same thing. I mean, that would be excellent.
And it's no secret, I hate trail maintenance. If you guys wanted to do all of the trail maintenance, all of it, I would be okay with that. I think Ron and Sandy like it.
This is really unique, the way they'll talk about managing an ecosystem that they're trying to restore is called adaptive management. Where they're gonna come in, you're gonna look every year and assess. And so what you have written down in year 1, in year 3, you might need to modify, because what you're finding is not different areas that you've got to give attention to. So to have someone oversee that kind of with some level of expertise that can provide that adaptive remanagement kind of strategy and kind of stay on top of things as they change is also important.
Like 5 years ago, knotweed was what we were going after, and now,
Yeah.
we've got pretty good handle on all that, but we didn't even know about stilt grass. Now stilt grasses are the thing, so it's like always something new popping up. That's what you're talking about, yeah. 5 years ago, stilt grass wouldn't have been in our plan.
Right.
And now we have 3 birthdays for it, so.
Follow up with Andrew's question about with the municipality and how to work together is, I was at the rec center yesterday, and there's a lot of things on the window promoting different events, including theater. I wonder if you guys take advantage of that. Like, you could have your maple sugaring sign, I didn't see one there, or things like that. And then also on the weekly bulletin that they put out, I don't know if you
At the
guys,
rec center?
yeah,
Yeah, I don't
Do you
think
guys
it's
get on
happened with
that?
the rec center yet.
you should be on that.
Great idea.
and-
We're on the library's radar, but
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, but that goes out to a pretty
Yeah.
large mailing list. And they've improved it a lot, and it's very visual now, and
Okay.
and so that would be perfect for like promoting not only volunteer activities, but your educational activities especially.
Great suggestion, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for letting us send it on you.
Yeah.
Just one quick note, I think they're on our website. We've got a whole bunch of work days lined up. There's a list there from our meeting we just had, but starting on March 16th over in Burke Park with the repairing project.
And the,
Rudy and Drew have been great, but help us get the word out.
yeah, we're trying to do 2 a month now instead of just 1 a month so that we can hit more parks. Because otherwise it's like you hit Twin Hills once over a summer. That's it, do 1 a month.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Okay, new business. Item 1 for members.
I have one, although it's new to my schedule, it's just a quick update on the park design guidelines or maintenance guidelines that we've been talking about, so I finally carved enough time to pull together some documents and guidelines that I was doing some research to see what's out there, and they're most large cities have guidelines. They range from 12 pages to 300 pages. So I'm starting to just diffuse those. And what I'd like to do is at the next meeting, come in with a, almost like a draft table of contents, just the areas that we were. How about that? And we can talk about the areas that would be helpful for you to have in a document. And I'm sure that there may be some things that I won't catch, or some things may be excessive and unnecessary. So that's where I am right now.
That's great, because I think, Richard, you mentioned in terms of our priorities, what is achievable in the time that we have. And maybe we can look at it in phases. We're not going to complete this guide this year, but we could maybe get the outline done and prioritize the areas that we want to work on first. So that's great. Thank you.
I have a new business thing, which is, I've mentioned it, but we haven't really brought it up formally, but I'd like to consider at a future meeting, the what's it called, Phil's Hill Parklet, beside the shooting range in Rob Hollow, to talk about naming it as a park. I think that will help to promote it.
Right.
And also for signage, and also promoting it as an accessible park. And we could talk about perhaps, could be part of our CIP discussion about improvements for accessibility in there, or in sensory, things like that. But I'd like to discuss, again, giving it a name, I think could be fun, could attract publicity and show, we have a park that a lot of energy was put into. I think Elaine helped, she's no longer there, helped to design and plan, and guys did a great job. It could have been just a spill pile. So let's promote it and let people know about it.
Do you want time on the next agenda to discuss it, or some further out in the,
No, next time is great.
is there anything that has to be done by you or members in preparation for that, so that we can,
Well,
if we want to bring something to propose, or do you want to general discussion first and then
I
propose?
guess we'd have to look into. I think my initial really motivation is just getting it named so we can promote it. And so we could brainstorm it. Before the next meeting, people could come in with ideas, or brainstorm a methodology of coming up with names would be another thing. Like, you can't have public contests, and I guess probably should talk with Laura. What are their rules around?
Yeah, I should check with the manager too, because I
Oh,
don't
and
know what
also
the
the
rules and
rules.
guidelines
Yeah.
are on naming of areas or parks.
It might
I
be a
really haven't
memorial.
been
like-
involved with anything like that. No.
Or could it, excuse me, sorry.
Please.
Could it become the main entrance for Rob Hollow Park? It's a nice, flat, open area, and there's parking. I don't know how many spots are available for the public, but probably similar to the other side of the Rob Hollow entrance, which has dilapidated steps, and then you go through the tunnel of invasive. So, and then you get to the bottom and you have to find your way around, and then you go through the park anyways, that parklet. So it may be a nice
Yeah, I guess
entry.
in the same sense that the fire pit and that flat area is part of Bird Park. The only thing would be if we wanted to separate a name for it just because of the accessibility aspect of it, but it could be an accessible component of Rob Hollow too.
How about this, Peter? Think about how you want us to handle this topic, and maybe if we have some homework to do, 2 weeks before the next meeting, we'll send out our homework assignment, and we can be prepared to. I'll throw new business out there. We talked about it a little bit in email, and I mentioned Ian for the invasives as part of the municipal code. So there were 2 areas where invasives show up in municipal regulations, as a, approval, not promotion necessarily, but approval. Ian gave us some feedback via email. Commissioner Flynn gave us some feedback, and for next meeting, we'll talk about that. I'll just throw one thing out there. The noxious weed law is the very restrictive sort of end of the road for these plants. They have all previously been on the invasive species DCNR list. So I see it as, well, we could go to the noxious weed law as the defining or deciding list, but we take, the long view. Some of the plants on the DCNR invasives list, which is a broader list, are gonna be on the noxious weed list in 10 years anyway. So if we can take it one step backwards in the process, we might, benefit everyone. But that's new business for next meeting.
I did speak to Ian about that. Yeah, and obviously the zoning and the saldo need to be in lockstep. And I said, well, put it in front of the planning board, whatever needs to happen. I mean, this should be relatively administrative. It should not be a heavy lift. So I think Ian was going to take that and make sure that, that process gets started. Already check with him.
He is, yeah, I talked to him about it yesterday, yeah, so. Yeah, he has Greg working on it to match up and compare to make sure everything is in sync, so.
With DCNR or with the ag?
No, just as far as what's in the saldo and what is in the municipal code. To make sure that everything matches.
What's the saldo?
Sorry, you would have to ask that, wouldn't you?
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
And land development ordinance, yes, something in land of subdivision and land, subdivision and land development ordinance.
Yeah, so, but I just kind of just put a bow on that one, right? Zoning goes through planning. Right, so it has to go, so any of these changes have to go to, you go to planning. Planning has to vote on it, then it has to come to commission and be voted on.
Right.
But again, these are relatively minor administrative changes that we're making, which is just updating to the recommendations of DCNR, if I understand correctly, right? So this should be relatively administrative. We just need to, Greg is going to go through the process of picking and tying everything. I think probably we want to make sure that you guys get your eyeballs on it and make sure you're like, yeah, that's correct. And then it goes to planning, and then commission.
The only way that I could see it being possibly a bigger change is that if the zoning, the permits, the permit review process includes a review of a planting list for residential projects, because right now, what Ian had clarified, the planting lists and planting plans are only required for commercial or larger
I
projects.
think that's true, yes, that's the case, yeah,
So-
I think residential.
Oddly enough, I have a client right now who is desperate to plant a humongous hedge of privet. She was in tears when I told her the other day, I cannot do this design for you. We were gonna work around it anyways, but now I said, I can't put my name on it. I can't work with you. And she was trying to come up with a way to, work with a contractor and either go out and buy the plant material now, or in the next 3 years while it's still being sold, or 2 years while it's still being sold, just find a way. And I talked with her about the zoning. It's a larger project, so they will have to get a permit. There'll be some paving and, new patio. And she said, well, we don't have to submit a plant list, so we won't have to worry in that way. So this is gonna continue to be an issue until the plants are phased out of trade. But it's something to consider. But then we also should think about how many projects actually how many projects actually have a plant list and a planting plan.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, the impact, I see it as more of it's a message, right? By having those plants in the pre-approved list, it's an endorsement and practically it's like, hey, go just put this in.
Yeah, this is always the exercise of how do you provide carrots, because sticks are not gonna be effective. Right, I mean, again, we have a hard enough time, keeping up with code enforcement. With core construction, let alone inspecting plants, right? And just you can imagine the volume of effort that it would take. So it's almost impossible. So how do you understand, right, the motivations and promote, and obviously have landscape designers who are like, no, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Well, and then it also comes down to think about what you're doing, do you, and ultimately that's the decision there. What kind of decision? It's their decision in the end. Do they want to proceed and potentially continue to pollute our natural air or pollute our natural lands? It comes down to a personal decision if they're not being policed.
This is something I spend quite a bit of time on, right? You could say, you're gonna replace your furnace. Should you buy a heat pump? Yes, but can I tell you, you have to? No. Right, how do we balance these factors and promote the right answer as best as we can? What mechanisms do we use? I'm really excited about the municipal website upgrade, and thinking around the PIO function in general, in terms of how we communicate. Because I think there are more effective means to communicate positive messages like this, that aren't saying you have to do something. It's more about, hey, look at these great things that are possible. But we have to kind of evolve our institutional communications frameworks to provide those mechanisms. But it's exactly those types of things that I think we want to be thinking about. Because yes, there's structure that we have to make sure is in place, but then it's also just communication.
So that'll be a topic for the 7:25 time slot next time. If your customer wants to dig them out of the.
I mean, oddly enough, I called her and I was walking through Bird Park. This was last week, looking at the tiny little leaves coming down. Yeah.
Any other new business? All right, so old business updates. You gave us a bit of an update, but.
We don't have
Bennett?
one.
No, we didn't talk about it this month, and we haven't got anything back from either Laura Lillard or Clavin. I don't know who it would come from.
But I think this is good, Peter, what you're doing will kind of light the fire again to get us moving on it, checking on an update. So we'll have an update.
Yeah, we'll reach out to them too, just because we fed them information in January and then we haven't got anything back from that.
I noticed the historical marker signs are going up.
Yeah, that's nice.
Take off. Okay, forestry and invasives. Oh, sorry.
Oh, has anything happened? I know that Tom was really anxious to get the sports field signs.
Don't know.
Those are still in limbo.
They may be in production, as far as I know, I don't know.
Forestry and invasives, Phil covered in the update.
I had a question about that. When he did his presentation, there was a discussion about Parks Board members walking him around through some of the parks. Is that still something that he needs? Or
He didn't ask for it specifically. I think he's digesting all of our maps right now. He knows the importance of contacting before he comes on site, so can review that with him.
And that may also be an opportunity for us to bring the Nature Conservancy into the process.
And also, I was thinking of getting some shots for the riparian project. My son has a high quality drone, still camera. So I'm gonna have him take some shots for us, but if he needs some, we can probably do that too.
Okay. I'll let him know.
Well, let me know when they're doing that one.
Oh, sure.
Question, the proposal that Waco submitted, is that a public document?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Park design guidelines we talked about.
I jumped on that earlier, yeah.
That's good. We're making up time. Table of contents.
Trail design's in there too, and that's same thing, pretty much. I'm gathering info. There's a Pennsylvania state guide, which is voluminous as well. And also I am working with Ron of Nature Conservancy to develop that.
And I think like the DCNR invasives list, I think it's acceptable to link out to another source rather than to have to keep updating your own material.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So our table of contents, we have introductions, we have stuff that's specific to Mount Lebanon, but in terms of the specification, like an electrician doesn't, well, rather say, you tell me, but an electrician refers to the national standard. Right, so.
Yeah, building codes are national. Sometimes there's local as well, but so like, yeah, our inspection office doesn't write up all the code.
So whatever we can do in this to not have to create and or maintain the material ourselves makes it more efficient.
If I could ask a question of Rudy and Phil. So let's say we, once we get this established, and this in relation to the comments about the volunteer hours and kind of the gap in between. Is that something that would be operating, or could that possibly be CIP in terms of getting, like all the trails up to this code or whatever standards there are? Because it would be a ton.
I mean, it would have to be an evaluation of where are they, what do we want them to be, and then come up with a plan to get to that point. So I really can't answer that unless we do an evaluation and.
Another plan.
Another plan.
Yeah, if I, recognizing Rudy's, practical reality answer, I'm gonna throw in my opinion, which is, if we were to say, look, every trail's gonna have to go, 6 inches deep, we're gonna have to put a bed in, we're gonna have to put a surface on it, we're gonna have, and we said we're gonna do, a mile, that's a capital project, right? There's no doubt. If you said we're just gonna go put mulch down, well, that's maintenance. So it's really gonna depend on the quality of the surface that we say this is gonna be the requirement. And then we're going to draw lines on the map and we're gonna say that's what we want. And then it's gonna be a question of, well, do you do 50 yards this year, which might fall under capital, or do you do 500 yards this year, which most likely is gonna be capital. So I would anticipate that those would be capital projects that will fall under probably a parks program effort that would have to be undertaken.
And new signs would also be.
I suspect new signs probably fall under. It depends how many, right? Again, Mike, as a general rule of thumb, $50,000. If it's under $50,000, it's maintenance. Yeah, it's maintenance. If it's over 50,000, you're in capital. Yeah, it's just a proxy.
Yeah.
Great to have you here.
So next up, Main Park Master Plan, also part of the email thread with Ian. Nothing, no tasks yet that I'm aware of. So he might ask us for something in between now and next meeting, but as of now, nothing to do.
Yeah, there was a discussion of having a meeting. He asked for dates and then nothing after that. For availability, and then he never responded whether there'd been a meeting scheduled or.
Yeah, I think he's been kind of tied up. The manager actually had shoulder surgery and he's been pulling double duty here for the last 3 or 4 weeks. Ian has, so he's had his hands full for a few weeks here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it was a tough group to schedule from the list of people I saw.
Richard, if anything happens between now and next meeting, and you wanna bring it to our attention in the next meeting, just let me know.
Okay, yeah, it's waiting on Ian to kind of do a kickoff meeting.
Danya, similar.
Yeah, but then I was wondering if there's a sports board representative. When Mindy was commissioner, she was talking about us working with the sports board. And at that time I had reached out and there wasn't anybody assigned. So now I'm wondering if there is. And if they have been talking about it, so that we're on the same page when stuff is ready to take
I have to contact the sports board anyway, so why don't I ask if they have anyone assigned to rep?
Thanks.
Feel free to CC me on those. That way I can try to help push.
And that covers old business unless anyone has.
I'd like to throw a couple things out there just to make you guys aware of some things that are going on. Number one, we had a really late start this year on grinding the leaves and the debris that we haul into the Rob Hollow Park and the golf course maintenance area. Our grinder broke down about 2 months ago, just as we started leaf season, and was a major overhaul. Basically, we had to have it hauled off site, and it's the drum. I don't even know what it weighs, but the grinding head drum, the bearings actually went out on it. So that machine's it's close to 30 years old now. It sits out. A lot of materials go through it. So we just got it back earlier this week and we just started grinding material. So we're working in Rob Hollow. We'd like to get out of there before the end of the year. We didn't this year. So it's a little bit smelly because it's anaerobic. The piles have been sitting for a while. But we opened them up and getting some air to them now. So we're working on that. As soon as we finish Rob Hollow, which I hope that, knock on wood, we don't have another mechanical failure. Probably about 2 or 3 weeks, we'll move over to the golf course and start grinding there. So, and then I've been getting quite a few calls, and Duquesne Lights moved in, removing some pretty significant trees. Greenhurst area, Greenhurst, Lindendale.
This today.
Yeah, so those are all private trees. So everything that they've removed in the woods laying around up there by the hospital and down towards the main park, that whole corridor, that's all been private trees. So they're working with property owners, individual property owners, and they've I guess consented to that. So just wanted to make sure. I got a couple calls today, as a matter of fact, about it. People were kind of upset, which I understand. They're mature trees and they look like they're pretty healthy coming down. But
And this is all part of the project that they presented.
no, it's a
Oh.
separate, because that's not transmission.
Yeah.
That's distribution.
Okay.
So these are smaller, 32 kV lines or whatever. It's not the transmission lines. That work's gonna start here shortly. So they're gonna start on that. I actually got notice from one of their planners yesterday. As a matter of fact, he called me and asked me if I wanted to walk any of the jobs, which I really don't need to, because most of it's on private property and easements, but they will be starting that soon here.
How do those trees get assigned? Is it Duquesne Light?
It's up to them, yeah, and I think they work with the homeowners, and if the homeowners, you said, and probably honestly, some of them, depending upon what kind of trees they are, they're fast growing maples and things of that nature, they're gonna flat side them, and they're gonna look awful, and they're really honestly gonna be a hazard because of the structure and the imbalance in the structure. Sometimes it's better that they're removed, really.
Is Duquesne Lake pay for that?
Yeah.
They pay the cost.
Yeah, but they don't haul the wood, so that's why you're seeing a lot of the wood sitting around in different areas there, so. It's in each individual homeowner, they work with them, and it's whatever the homeowner can work out with Duquesne Light. It's within their easements and their right of ways, they have the right to go in there and conduct vegetative management to protect their facilities and make sure that they don't have outages and that it's not unsafe and those type of things, so. It's all maintenance and management program that, they work on. And typically it's structured anywhere from 3 to 5 years where they come back through and prune back and remove enough vegetation. But we've had a lot of disagreements I have personally with Duquesne Light, just in the sense that they create a lot of sucker growth, the way they grow. And it's sucker growth comes back in really quick and it's kind of counterproductive. So, and they just keep cutting back further and further each time they come in, and you're opening up the canopy, so you get scald on the trees and all kind of things that are not good for the growth of the tree.
With them on Fruithurst recently. They were up on our street too.
They may have,
There was like this weird sort of trimming where there was just trimming on the side.
you know what, they were working in Sunset Hills, so
Yeah.
I know they had a planter over in that area about a month or two ago, so it probably was them. If it's under the wires, then yeah, it was Duquesne Light. Nelson Tree's been doing a lot of the work for them too, so that's the contractor that they have done that.
I saw this and it was this weird sort of trimming where they were just trimming on one side of the tree, like. Yeah, and I was like, why are they doing this?
They have standards. There's so much clearance that they have to have between the energized lines and the trees, just for safety. And it's a national standard that they're using, is what they tell me at least anyway, so,
And until we underground utility lines, they've got air rates,
yeah.
and this will continue to happen. We can jump up and down and we can, be frustrated, but they've got air rates and they can do what they need to do.
And it's a safety issue. I mean,
It is, it is.
It truly is a safety and a reliability issue, so that, trees aren't falling on the wires, causing outages, fires and those type of things.
Which is why I'm trying to get Duquesne Light at the table to start talking about how do we start underground. It's really expensive though. It's about $1 million a mile.
Yeah.
What is happening on Bower Hill Road? Regarding underground utility?
That's communication cables.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just an update, some sort of an upgrade for communication. That's the interduct that they're installing. And the interduct will carry some sort of communication cables, whether it's fiber optic or whatever it is. But it's a third party that's doing work for some company out of Maryland, I think it was. The only reason I know that is because of the PA1 calls that came through and the design tickets. Plus they had to apply for street opening permits because they were within the right of way on the upper side of Fire Hill. And I signed off on those.
And is that going to be like the main trunk line? of
I have
everything?
no idea. I
It
just
seemed
know.
odd that it was just.
Yeah.
down
Yeah, I don't know. There's so many communication companies out there that they could be doing that work for anybody. And, somebody's just trying to get in the market or, I mean, like you said, that's a trunk line that's going right through there, who knows? Or it might be an upgrade of a service that's already on the poles and they're trying to remove it from the poles. I don't know. They don't tell us that.
The tree that came down at 19 and Rockland on Sunday
Yes,
was massive.
yeah, was it probably
We were so
true?
lucky
Yeah,
that happened at that time of
right.
day.
Did it
Yeah, our
fall,
guys-
it fell on
It was road,
Washington?
like, yeah, across, it closed Washington,
Works was out there
4 AM.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
for hours then,
Yeah.
because they were still on it.
yeah, that big machine, I came up with that house right next to the church there.
You could actually watch the tree. It was starting to fail over the last year. It was progressively leaning more and more toward the street. I was just curious when it was gonna finally go.
Saturday I did.
Yeah, no, I was up early and I heard the chainsaws at 5 in the morning. I don't
Yeah.
live too far from there.
Yeah. And keeping with the tree theme here, Duquesne Light's gonna work with us and assist us. They actually started today. There's several of those real large oak trees on Austin Avenue, between Summer Place and Terrace View. It's a corridor of large mature oaks. We lost one last year. It fell between two houses and slightly damaged the roofs of two homes. Beside it, we were really lucky it uprooted. We did a more extensive analysis of it. We brought a certified arborist in from Bartlett that worked with us, and there was quite a bit of Ganoderma as a wood decaying fungus. So we after analyzing the bases, and a lot of them had mushrooms and things growing on them, which is an indicator of decaying wood. We're removing, I think, 7 or 8 of those trees through there. Yeah, it's gonna be, we've talked to the residents, we walked through, we put marks on them.
I've avoided going over there because I know they're gonna have my head.
Well, I mean, and they were upset when I talked to them. I knocked on the doors and anyone that was home, I wanted to talk to them face to face, and it's either that or you leave them and you take a chance of them blowing over and really, coming through a bedroom window in the middle of the night. So it's not a risk we're willing to take. I mean, not after we had the other one fail and we've done our analysis and we've found decay on them. Some folks have been kicking the mushrooms off over the years just so we don't see them, and it's not a good thing either, so. But, it started today. They had to turn the power off to some homes up there in order for their crews. What they're gonna do is they're gonna remove them down to the bell lines, to the communication cables, and then we're gonna take the remainders down with our equipment and grind the stumps.
And so the cycle is, they're gonna take the top off now.
Yes,
We will come in the next
couple weeks.
Couple weeks.
Yeah, once they get finished.
down to the stump.
Yes,
Then
stumps
we'll
will be ground stump later in the summer.
in the summer
Yes.
and then
Replant with small, slower growing, but trees under those wires on the wire side. Where we're removing the trees that won't
when will we plant new?
fall. Yeah, that's our cycle on everything. We try to follow that cycle annually.
Trees that large, do we expect to see once the main trunk is exposed to hollowed out center? Is that?
Not really, no.
Or is that?
What we've typically found with those silver maples, yes, because they're a hardwood, not so much. what I've seen over my years of doing this is that the base of the tree usually decays on an oak tree. And really, a lot of times, and it's not so much on Austin, Country Club a little bit, Old Farm not so much. But where we have those more mature and older stands, you can see that the root flares are actually coming out over the curb. They've outgrown the space that they were put in a place that they were never probably intended to be where they are now, 60, 70, 80 years ago.
I know we tried with Williamsburg. Is there an opportunity with those oak trees on Austin to have somebody harvest that wood, the trunk aspect?
We really don't pursue that. I mean, we just cut it up into chunks and, run it through the big grinder that we have, really.
One other thing that I'm interested in, and I know this is probably too hard to analyze, but it's how do those mature trees and their removal impact our stormwater? It's,
I mean, you're losing canopy for sure. So,
yeah, and we're therefore losing, water being taken up out of the stormwater. What is the impact, right? It's,
I mean, to be honest with you, it probably has a positive impact on the trees that are beside it because it has more room to grow.
true. True.
I mean, and it depends on the size. We try to maintain a 40-foot spacing on all of our planting at minimum. So that everything has enough sunlight. It's not competing for the water, the limited amount of water, because you're growing 50% of the root system is next to the road. So
Yeah, that would be my take on it too. For the street trees, I think that the impact is probably minimal because the roots are compacting the soil and the lawns. It's more the surface area that's absorbing the water than the tree roots themselves. And I think those trees are going so deep to pull out water.
And I think that, those trees are probably all planted at the same time. You just look at them, the canopies are, so the size of the trees. This is kind of the same with the ash trees, we're treating them with the injections, but we're breaking it up. We're not like, we're not denuding the whole street and then replanting all the trees so they're not all the same age. We're kind of spacing the gap to the age of the plantings. I think that's kind of a good thing too. It's not as big of an impact at once with removal. And you're also breaking up future maintenance of the trees and the canopy, so.
And the feel of the street too, when you said that about Austin doing every
the tunnel.
other.
I mean, exactly.
So that fungus is not endemic to the soil.
I don't know.
As far as,
I don't know. I mean, it's a wood decaying fungus, so it's.
I have one in my soil. It's not that, it's different.
Yeah,
And they said you can't plant anything there.
no, there's no cure for it. I mean, there's nothing to spray, there's nothing to inject, there's nothing that you can do. Once it starts to decay wood, it's just a matter of time before it goes far enough into the structure of the tree that it causes a failure.
I mean, also, like, you can't plant a replacement either on my particular one, because nothing will grow there.
Yeah.
Supposedly.
Yeah,
Thanks, Rudy.
sure.
So that covers all of our old business status
I have
updates.
one other, I'm sorry. The riparian area in Bird Park, which Phil and Dave Hales, thank you. And I met in the early winter. And we were going to I'm gonna take a look at the growth of all the perennials that were planted last year, see what has made it. What we had talked about in the winter was because Phil's team schedule is more open now would be a good time for planting, but a lot of the perennials haven't leafed out yet. So I think that it would be wise to give it another couple of weeks to see what is actually coming back, what didn't make it, whether, whether it was due to the weather or the deer. But I think what's important also is that we discuss how densely do we actually want to see that riparian area. Do we want a dense planting? Because when it was planted, the planting plan does not show a very dense planting, and the plants were planted with, they're never, unless if they're clump spreading, or they're clump growing perennials, they're not going to spread by rhizome. So unless they are replicating over time, it's going to take a very long time for the edges to actually fill in with plant material. So, I can go out and say, okay, yeah, we need to we need double what we put in last year, and that would cover the banks, but is that what we're trying to achieve? I don't know.
It's gonna culvert down.
Yes. Yes,
Do they propagate by seed or do you know? Or-
it's different. There's Christmas fern in there. I think that's by seed. The Tiarella, the foam flower. It will spread by rhizome, but that's a slow
Yeah.
spread. So, and I can't remember exactly what else is in there, but.
It's a good question. That might be a park design question. I mean, my initial response is if it's less than 3 feet tall, it should be dense.
Mhm.
If it's more than that, because it blocks your line of sight. It should be less dense.
Right, and what
Because-
Dave had said when we met in the winter was that the intent, the overall goal of the restoration project was for the bank to be stabilized. So the roots of the plants were planted at a density so that the bank was going to be stabilized, and he put the netting down, and the way that they designed the whole system. As of right now, conditions have improved, but do we want to go further than that? Do we want to densely plant it because they are very low growing perennials? Yeah, my recommendation would be yes, for that reason, and to continue to reduce the erosion that will likely occur over time. And time will tell, but the summer and the storms that are coming this summer, what will happen as that creek rises, the force of the water, it may end up taking out some of those plants. So, Richard, you and I had talked about this, and I was hoping that maybe you and I could meet out there in the next couple of weeks, once things are looking more green. And we can take a peek, and anybody else, of course. Welcome to join us. Okay, great. We can take a look at it. Richard, I know you're really busy right now, so if you don't have
No,
time.
that's all I got. Too bad, yeah, I was in the park most of the day Sunday, so. that would've been a good time.
Okay,
It was sunny, but no, whenever you want, just let me know.
okay, great.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Kelly. Thanks,
okay.
Richard. Commission meeting message and volunteer for, I didn't change that. March. Thanks to a tip from Peter, I did put a plug in for street trees being on a reorg board for Parks and Recreation. Thank you, Commissioner Flynn, for supporting that. And does anyone have any topic that we want to plug at commission this month? Or do you have, Commissioner Flynn, do you have a suggestion?
I'm always about trees, but yeah, Rudy's gonna get tired of me talking about it, trees to him. Honestly, the riparian project, I think, just calling that out, because I don't know that it gets as much visibility as it probably should. I think that would be a good one. There's all kinds of fun pieces that you can throw in there. That's a good story. It's partnerships and outside funding and
Second and fourth Tuesdays. Is that- yes. So how about this? We won't belabor it because we're going to try to get out of here. But if anyone wants to volunteer on a topic, riparian project or otherwise for the second or fourth Tuesday, let us, let's talk about it via email.
What we were talking about doing it in February, but we didn't, was just even to outline our priorities to share that with the commission. We, maybe not 4 and 5, since we don't know what's going on with them, but 1 through 3 we could.
Okay.
In addition to the riparian, it ties
We
into
have 2 meetings, so we can get both. Okay, great. And anyone else before we adjourn? We didn't do as well as Richard.
We were getting there, and then.
Just, well, a quick park thing too, it's really not treesy or anything like that, but it's, we're working, we're real close to putting out the specifications and, for bids for, converting the tennis courts at Meadowcroft from tennis courts to pickleball courts, from 2 tennis courts to 6 pickleball courts. So it'll involve fencing and new, net post standards and so forth, so. That should be going out, but the work isn't gonna actually take place until June, after the kids are out of school. Because they use that for lunch recess in that playground area, so we're gonna hold off on any kind of contractual work until school's out.
Motion to adjourn. May I have a motion? Sure.
Second.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Good evening.
There's stuff going on.